Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, Fabulites. This is Angela with another edition of Notes on the Newsfeed. Thank you for clicking and sticking around for my commentary on the news. Now, some of these articles, I've read the full article. Some of these articles, I've skimmed the full article. Some of these articles, I've only read the little click-through after you see the headline or skim the click-through. And some of these articles, I've only read the headline, but I'm just going to share with you the headline and my thoughts on the article or my thoughts just on life in general and what comes up for me. So, and you can actually find the links to the actual articles at BFabulousYou on Twitter. BEFABULOUSYOU, Twitter, twitter.com. I don't know what Twitter is, but y'all, to Twitter. And I still need to put the link. I need to figure out how to put the link. Always something new to learn. Always something to do. National Inquirer may have hired a Playboy playmate to prevent her from going public with a negative story about Trump. You know, I had forgotten that the headline said she was a Playboy playmate. Which I don't know why, but I kind of find that a little offensive because I don't know much about Playboy playmates, but that's just like that woman could be a lawyer, a doctor, a journalist. I don't know. But anyway, the reason that they're saying the claim is that she has a story about being Zero's mistress and that they paid her $150,000 a year to be a journalist in order to be quiet about it. I wonder what they pay their regular journalists or columnists to be a columnist. I wonder what they pay their regular columnists and if her column is any good. Democracy infection. And this is coming off the BBC. I'm not crazy about their headlines. A lot of times their headlines, when you click through, it's kind of like, I guess I could see where they come up with the headlines, but it's not a good quality headline to me. Because, you know, it's like, well, what does that mean? But I think that this was talking about when something having to do with China and Hong Kong and how Hong Kong was thought to be this. Maybe that's a whole different story. See, I don't even know. But I think it's like, how was democracy going to infect China when Hong Kong became connected or something? I don't even remember. But I just skimmed the article. The difference between how millennials and baby boomers consume news in one chart. So, older people watch news on TV. Younger people get their news on the internet. And it's like I can see the charts in my head. Like if you're talking about the internet, it's like if you're under 20, it's high. And if you're over 55, it's low. And the other way around, if you're talking about watching news on TV, if you're under 25, it's low. If you're over 55, it's high. And, you know, there were some other ways that people get news in between, but those were the two that I remember. And it makes sense. Society is constantly changing and in flux. So, Alyssa Montano just ran the 800-meter 5 months pregnant. Now, 5 months pregnant is, I guess, in the second trimester. Some people go through their whole pregnancy and don't know that they're pregnant. And they say that if you're a physically active person, you can continue to be physically active through your pregnancy. It's just that, like, if you're not a physically active person, it's not really a good idea to be like, oh, I'm pregnant. Let me start training for a marathon. Twitter went crazy over a photo of Joe Biden in a lifeguard chair. And I skimmed this article. The impression that I got is that when Joe Biden was a child, a teen, a youth, that he realized that he didn't know any black people. There was a pool for black people in his community, and he became a lifeguard at that pool. Now, I could be wrong, but I just thought the whole thing was interesting. And it reminded me of a piece that I saw on white students at historically black colleges and universities. And the piece might have been done as a result of Howard University having a valedictorian that was a white man. And the story kind of had various non Black people or people who didn't identify as Black who went to HBCUs, kind of talking a little bit about their experience of not being in the majority, and, you know, just kind of how they filtered themselves or didn't filter themselves. And, you know, it was like probably a 5-minute piece, if that. But what it kind of reminded me of is that even when they have had that experience, a truck is backing up. I thought they were going to crash into me. Even when they've had that experience as a white male in American society, where the society is basically designed for and by white men, and is just a constant, ongoing, subtle and non-subtle and big way and small way affirmation of rich white men with property and power, then you know, even when you do find yourself in that situation, I think it gives you a point of reference for empathy. And I think it gives you a point of reference for beginning to understand the experiences of people who are not rich white men with property and power, or some combination of those things. But I don't think it's exactly the same. So, you know, I think, you know, and I don't think you necessarily have, you know, so I thought it was interesting. Tiger Woods agreed to a men's fitness cover story after its parent company obtained evidence of an affair. So the parent company, I think, is the same company that's National Inquirer. So by the time I got to this story, I was thinking a lot about news and sources of news, and how the sources of news are being more and more consolidated. So even though there appear to be, oh my God, there are so many channels on TV. There are like 8 million channels on TV, but they're only owned by 5 or 10 people, or it's 20 companies, or, you know, so it seems to be getting broader, but it's an illusion because it's owned by smaller people. So I don't know if the National Enquirer had already run the story about Tiger Woods. One of the women that Tiger Woods had dealt with, her mother, I think if I remember correctly, had gone to the National Enquirer and said, my daughter is kicking it with Tiger Woods. So I don't know if they had run the story, because when I read the article, I didn't get the impression that they had run the story already, but just that they had the information. But it's interesting, because even if they had run the story or whatever, Tiger Woods, like me or you, might not have realized that it's the same company. And so we might not have been like, well, I'm not doing a story for you because you just did a story against me. You know, we probably wouldn't even know the difference. That's like I pay attention, like, hey, Fox News, Fox TV. You know, like Fox, like Shots Fired was on Fox TV. And, you know, I just kind of try to pay attention and understand, you know, NBC, MSNBC, like, you know, who's who and what the connections are. But I'm just now starting to try to pay attention. It's a lot. Protests continue unabated in politically torn Venezuela. I still don't know what's going on in Venezuela. I skimmed this article, or maybe the paragraph, and it said that the peaceful protests in the day turned into violent protests at night. So, you know, I thought, oh, I'm sorry, Pooda. Yeah, shisha poo. I just want to make sure that the Belaruski is comfortable, because she the Belarus. But the people just continued. I mean, I want to read. I'm glad it's staying in the news, because, you know, each time I see it, it makes me more and more want to read about it. So maybe today will be the day that I actually read about Venezuela. I love to read about it from a progressive source. Oh, this is coming off of Atlanta Black Star. This might be a good article to read. Historical marker honoring Emmett Till defaced in Mississippi. And you may or may not know that Emmett Till was a young man who, maybe in the 60s, was lynched, mutilated, killed in Mississippi. And the story was that he went into a store in a place, I think the place is called Money, Mississippi, went into a store in Money, Mississippi, and winked at, catcalled the woman behind the counter. Said, I want to have sex with you. Whatever the lie was, whatever the story was, I don't remember. But as a result of some teenage boy from Chicago saying, you know, hey, cutie, or not saying, hey, cutie. Maybe he looked her in the eye or didn't look down, or maybe, I don't really know what the story was. But I think actually here recently, someone had written a book about this, and the woman said that she had lied about it. But I haven't, but anyway, I think what was very significant about the whole Emmett Till situation was that his mama, his body was jacked up. His soul had gone on, but his body was really, really jacked up. And his mama did not have a closed casket. She wanted his casket to be open. And Jet Magazine covered that story, and they took a picture of Emmett Till's mutilated body in the casket. And so I think that was really shocking and disturbing and controversial and just very stimulating at the time that it happened. Rest in power, ancestor Emmett Till. I don't know if your mom is still alive, but just peace, to all of us for just the trauma. But the historical marker honoring Emmett Till was defaced in Mississippi. Is coming off of Atlanta Black Star. These 20 cities will be the world's most populous by 2100. Fahrenheit 451, Lauren Harrier cast as Millie in HBO movie. Laura Harrier, who I'm not familiar with, but she's brown. I never read the book Fahrenheit 451, but apparently they were burning books and dang, I read the little description, but I can't even remember. But it made me think, oh, it's a dystopian novel, but it made me think, oh, maybe I'll read it. It's one of those things that I didn't read in high school, but I could have read in high school, and I didn't read in college. But it seemed like one of those things that, was assigned reading in a lot of high school classes. Man fell into extremely acidic Yellowstone hot springs and lived to tell the tale. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I remember reading the headline that a man had fallen into a hot springs in Yellowstone National Park. So I'm assuming this is a follow-up of that story. I'm glad that he lived to tell the tale. I wanted to click it, but I forgot to see if it was a follow-up of that actual story. Hulu has a secret weapon that could give it an advantage over Netflix. The TSA may require airline passengers to remove books from carry-on luggage. Now, when I skimmed the article, it was sort of talking about the idea that, what if you have a book in Arabic? Are the TSA people going to be like, oh my God, the Quran, this must be a terrorist. Let's, arrest them, not let them on the plane, harass them or whatever. Or, are they going to see, oh, she's reading The Handmaid's Tale, so she must be a radical, or what does it mean? And I mentioned, and it feels invasive to me. But I mentioned it to my mother, and she said that the official rationale, or the story that she heard, was that, a book, when it's scanned, it just looks like a solid image. They can't see what it is. And so they just want you to take it out and put it in the bin, so that they can, see that, oh, it's just a book. But, it's funny because books, we're speaking of Fahrenheit 451 and burning books, and, books and ideas and conversation and dissent, these things are powerful. So is it just, oh, we just want to see that it's a book, or is it not? Report, there are hundreds of judges in New York who do not have law degrees. I remember, I think it was in Mississippi when I realized I was doing, some organizing or work or whatever. And I realized that I always thought that judges were lawyers, but I realized that you could be elected to be judge without, in certain, municipalities, without having a law degree, which just surprised me. Because it's interesting that, you would have the responsibility of interpreting the law and enforcing the law or whatever, but, you haven't been to law school. And law school is a 3-year process, and some say it's very rigorous. So, I don't know. I just think it's interesting to be like, oh, just use your common sense. Or we just rely on common sense. We don't need any, interpretation of the law. I think, because there is the Supreme Court, who, you know, I mean, the law is so open to interpretation. I guess my common sense, you know, analysis as a layperson is just as valid as, you know, Bella's or the Scalia's interpretation as a Supreme Court justice. I don't know. I'm gonna pause right here and just end this edition of Notes on the Newsfeed. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and listening. Thank you for being here, being you, being fabulous, and have a wonderful day, because you know what today is. It's the best day ever.